Braha, a writer of 6 books, 3 of them being Vedic, 2 Western of them, 1 being an Indo-Western book, and the final being non-duality. His latest book, The Art and Practice of Ancient Hindu Astrology, is a culmination of all his practical experiences while reading the charts and is supposed to be one of the best sellers. Let us ask James himself as to his journey into the world of astrology and about his books. James, please do take over and do let us know something about your books.
Okay. This book is called Astrologos, Revelations of a Hindu Astrologer. This is about my experiences in going to India in 1983 and 1984. I found R. Santanam in Delhi and studied with him for about, I can't remember how long it was anymore. I think it was a month or 2. I can't remember. But anyway, I studied with Santanam and I learned Hindu astrology. I came back to America and I practiced for about a year. Then I went back again and I met P.M. Padia. P.M. Padia was different from Santanam. Santanam was more of a scholar, okay? Padia, who now lives in Bombay, is more of a practicing astrologer. And hold on one second. This is my first teacher, Santanam. Mm-hmm. And this is my teacher. Santanam is no longer alive. That's my second teacher, P.M. Padia. He still lives in Bombay. Padia was a practicing astrologer, so that experience in 1984 was much more valuable than learning the basics. When I came home, after a month or 2, I wanted to write down everything that he had taught me, everything I could remember, and I wrote this book for my fellow Western astrologers. It's called Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer. This book sells in India as well. Okay, it's a very popular book. That book has all the basics of astrology. Many years later, 20 years later, I wrote a book which was a conversation with a student that I was teaching. So this is called The Art and Practice of Ancient Hindu Astrology, 9 Intimate Sessions Between Teacher and Student. So in this book, I teach the astrology as it works. I go by my experience. A lot of what they say in the scriptures I find do not work well, so I don't use them. I only use what works. That's the best book. These other 2 books are more Western. This is How to Be a Great Astrologer, which is Western planetary aspects. But even if you're studying Jyotish, if you learn this knowledge, it's not like it's terribly different. It's pretty similar. And then this is How to Predict Your Future, which is Western transits. And then there's a whole section. The second section is on the dashas and bhuktis, how the Vimshottri dashas and bhukti system work.
So it's a cross between the Eastern and the Western.
It's not a cross. You cannot mix the systems. You cannot mix the systems. You use the Hindu astrology to find what you find. You use the Western to find what you find. I'll give you an example. Forget the Western for a minute. There are many systems of astrology. When I was getting married, my second marriage, there was nothing in the marriage in the Western horoscope, nothing to indicate marriage. There was nothing in the Hindu chart to indicate marriage. A friend called me up. He said, James, you're not getting married. I said, I'm engaged. I'm getting married in 3 months. He said, you're not getting married. There's nothing in the chart. We got married. We're still married 25 years later. A year later, a year after that, I met K.N. Rao, and he was teaching at the Vedic Astrology Conference in California or Sedona, wherever it was. And he taught another system. He taught the Yogini system. And in the Yogini system, at the time of marriage, I had gone into Libra dasha. And Libra in my horoscope indicates the marriage indicator. Libra in my chart has Mercury in the earliest degree. Everything was right there in that system. Now, did I mix the Yogini and the Parashara? No, I didn't mix them. I used the knowledge I got from that, and I used the knowledge I get from. So that's like with the Western. You'll get certain things from Western astrology that you won't get from the Hindu. For example, one of the charts that we were going to use, okay, so for example, sometimes there are things that you will not notice, like in the chart of Ramakrishna. If you're not using Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, I don't use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the Hindu chart, but I see the Western chart, and Uranus is right on the ascendant. This is a person from the beginning of life. I mean, 8 degrees Uranus, Aquarius, ascendant 8 degrees. This is a person who, right from the start of life, is going to do what he wants to do. Nobody's going to fit him into a mold. He's completely independent. So I see that from the Western system. I don't mix the systems, but I know that piece of information because I've seen it there.
So that's an added advantage that one has when one has studied both the systems.
Same if you had Chinese astrology. If you use Jyotish and Chinese astrology, you have an advantage. If you use Jaimini and Parashara, you have an advantage. I can use Jaimini, I can use Parashara, and I can use the Western. When I do readings, I speak mainly from the Hindu system, but I know what I've learned from the other, and I can tell them what I've learned. But if I do a reading, I'm going over the Hindu chart.
Okay, so we can start with the charts that you plan to talk about today. James, which chart would you like me to flash on screen for our viewers?
Amitabh.
Okay.
Because I saw Slumdog Millionaire, and I always see the little boy going, Amitabh, Amitabh, Amitabh.
So we have here Amitabh Bachchan's chart for everybody to have a very good look at, so that when James explains the chart, we know why he has said something that he has. For everybody's very kind attention, ascendant is Aquarius, Ketu sitting very much in the ascendant, a retrograde Saturn sitting in the 4th house in Taurus, Jupiter sitting in the 6th house, an exalted Jupiter sitting in the 6th house in Cancer, Rahu in the 7th house in Leo, Mars, Sun, Venus, and an exalted retrograde Mercury sitting in the 8th house in Virgo, Moon sitting in the 9th house of Libra. That sums up the entire chart of Amitabh Bachchan. So let us get back to James once again.
Okay, so so this chart, the strongest planet in this chart, in my opinion, is Mars. Mars is very strong because it's conjunct so tightly with exalted Mercury. Mercury is past the highest point of exaltation. The highest point is the 15th degree, but still, Mars is picking up this extremely positive energy of Mercury. Mars is and Mars rules the 3rd house, which is the arts.
Okay.
And Mars aspects the 3rd house, and it's a strong aspect because it's aspecting its own sign, Aries.
Mm-hmm.
And the moon and Rahu are aspecting the 3rd house. These are all strong aspects. The Rahu aspect is a malefic. Rahu is a malefic, but the aspect of Rahu onto an Upachaya house, 3, 6, 10, and 11, is good, because the Upachaya houses can use malefic energy. So he has Rahu aspecting the 3rd house, Mars aspecting its own sign, 3rd house, Moon aspecting the 3rd house, and the 3rd ruler is the strongest planet in the chart, one of the strongest. The Sun is also quite strong because it's also very close to Mercury. But Mars also rules the career house. So he can have fame, or he can have recognition, things like that. The recognition for him may have come a little bit slowly. He may not have made it very quickly, because the ascendant ruler is retrograde. Now, this is a very, very strong chart, but the ascendant ruler is retrograde. Now, a retrograde is not an affliction. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't hurt the ascendant, but it makes the ascendant latent, slower to produce because it's retrograde. You have to push a little bit to make the Saturn energy move, okay? Now it's good for him that Saturn is retrograde because Saturn in the fourth house is a very unhappy placement. The fourth house is the heart. Most people, unless Saturn's very well aspected, most people with Saturn in the fourth house are sad, they're unhappy, and the early childhood is difficult, and they grow up fast. There's no childhood. But because it's retrograde, it's more passive, so it doesn't cause as much damage. If you had a benefic in the fourth house, say Jupiter, you would want Jupiter to be moving forward. It would be a great fourth house. If Jupiter was in the fourth house but retrograde, it would be very good, but it wouldn't be great because it's not giving all its energy, okay? So it's not an affliction, it's not bad, but it makes the planets passive. And that also means that early in life, it's possible that there was a shyness or not wanting to promote himself because the ascendant was retrograde. But the horoscope is so powerful. Jupiter aspects the 10th house. And the Mars rules. It's just a very strong chart. So there was going to be fame, but still a shyness or introspection. Ketu on the ascendant would do that. Now Saturn is aspecting the ascendant. Saturn aspects are not good, but they make a person hold back. They make them restrictive. But Saturn's aspecting its own sign, which is good, that it's aspecting its own sign.
But Saturn is also retrograde here. I mean, as you said, it may not, a direct Saturn would have caused a lot of sorrow. This Saturn is passive. So this aspect could also be not as restrictive as such because it's retrograde?
No. It'll still be just as restrictive. It'll still hit that first house hard.
Okay.
But you have to understand, it's aspecting its own sign.
Yes.
So yes, the Saturn will cause some introspection, but it will also give him integrity, humility, and power. Some power because it, like if Saturn is aspecting someone's 7th house, it's not good for marriage. But if it's aspecting Capricorn or Aquarius or Libra, it may hurt the marriage a little bit, but the partner will be special because it's aspecting its own sign. There'll be something very good about the partner because it's aspecting its own sign, like that. Now, the 2nd house here is magnificent. Jupiter aspects the 2nd house, its own sign. That's big. The ruler of the 2nd house is exalted. That's big. And then you have Venus, Mars, Mercury, Sun, all aspecting the 2nd house. If it was just Mercury aspecting the 2nd house, it would be very bad because Mercury would be aspecting Pisces, its fallen sign. So Mercury's not really helping so much, but these other planets are. Venus is aspecting its exaltation sign. And then you've got just a lot of energy. Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Sun, aspecting the 2nd house. That's money. But it's also speaking and languages. So he should be very good at speaking and using words and using languages. But this is also increased because the 10th house ruler is conjunct with exalted Mercury. So the career is going to be a lot of speaking and writing and teaching. It's extraordinary.
Yes.
But also, the Jupiter in the 6th house. The 6th house is health, of course, but the 6th house is enemies and competitors and jealous people. By having a benefic in the 6th house, you don't have enemies. You don't have a lot of enemies. People like you. And it's the ability to rise above your competition. So the Jupiter 6th house exalted, there's no enemies. And the people, and when he goes to be against another actor to compete, he gets the part instead of them because of this overcoming enemies, overcoming competitors. But again, he didn't make it early because Ketu is in the ascendant ruler is retrograde, Saturn aspects the ascendant, so it took time for him to make it, okay? But this chart also has very strong metaphysical psychic abilities because of all these planets in the 8th house. Many astrologers, they get very, oh my God, there's these terrible planets in the 8th house and it's terrible. It depends what the planets are as to what they're doing. Now, he does have a dangerous period coming soon. When he comes to Venus-Mars, November 2020 to January 2022, he is in danger of dying or accidents, because Venus is in the 8th house, conjunct a malefic. So in Venus-Mars, that's a dangerous period. Now, if he uses astrology and he has some yagyas performed, I would have yagyas for Venus, or I would chant the Venus mantra. I would keep Fridays as a restful spiritual day. I would wear a diamond or a white sapphire, but I would also be very cautious. I wouldn't go on motorcycles. I wouldn't go mountain climbing. That's a dangerous period because Venus is in the 8th, which is longevity, tightly conjunct a malefic. Venus is 15, Mars is 22. There could be accidents, but it's a very, very, very strong chart. And he does well internationally because of the moon in the 9th house. Now, the 9th house ruler is not good. The 9th house ruler, Venus, is fallen. It's in the 8th house, and it's with Mars. It's not a, Venus is not a very good planet here. He may have troubles with the skin. He may have troubles with the throat, thyroid, or reproductive system. He could also have problems because of all these 8th house planets in Virgo with the intestines and things like that. But Venus is the throat, the thyroid, the reproductive system, and Venus is his most afflicted planet. But the moon in the 9th house, that's something very good for, going to foreign countries and such. But it's not, the 9th house is mixed. It's very mixed because the ruler is very weak. The planet there is strong. Now, beginning astrologers always have, the biggest question I had in 1983 and 1984, what happens when the ruler is very good, but the planets in the house are bad? Or the ruler is very bad? This is not a question that can ever be answered. It's a mixture. So if you have a big mansion and everything is beautiful in the mansion and you have golden chandeliers and everything is wonderful, but if the mansion underneath, if the termites are eating away the foundation, it's very bad. Or you could have a house where the foundation is very strong, but in the house there's mold and there's leaking. So it's mixed. It's a mixed 9th house.
Okay, as you have just said, he has a baritone, a die for baritone. It is his voice that he has worked so hard on and has carried him in his journey as an actor. His acting skills have developed, and as you very rightly stated, he did not get what he had aspired to right from the beginning. He had to work really hard and faced a number of failures in life because of, as you say, the retrograde Saturn, the Lagna Lord, and the Ketu. But he has reached a pinnacle, and he's said to be the one-man industry at the moment. He can rule the roost.
The 10th house is magnificent. He has no competitors because of Jupiter. He rises above. This Mars is outrageously strong. So this is if you're doing a horoscope for somebody like this, you'll see the shyness from Saturn and from Ketu.
Okay.
But Mars is the ability to overcome everybody, to be stronger than everybody. So both of these go on, both. But Mars is the ruler of the 10th house, career. So that's fame. The 3rd house is music, dance, and drama. And the third house is the ability to put your hands on something. His third house is so strong, wherever he puts his hands, his focus, his attention, he can succeed. Even if it's completely outside of his realm. Because the third house gives so much power. The third house is one of the most underappreciated houses. You could be doing a horoscope that looks very strong, very wealthy, strong career, and if the third house is really weak, by really weak, I mean a fallen planet in the third house, the third house being fallen, third house ruler being fallen, things like that. The third house is really weak. The person will have no ambition, and when they try to focus, they can't focus. They can't get things done.
No initiation, no courage to move ahead.
No ambition, lazy, and if they try to focus, they can't. They get spaced out. So third house is very important, and it's the arts, and then you have, the fifth house is music. The third house is specifically music, dance, and drama.
Right.
The 11th house is dancing, specifically dancing. So you can, like I did a chart the other day where the third house was not very good. I said the artistic, there's no artistic. There's nothing artistic, but her 11th house was the strongest house in the chart. But I said, but you love to dance. And she said, I do. I love to dance. That's the 11th house. The fifth house is the mind, and therefore it represents creativity, creative. So the fifth house and the third house are the arts, but the third house is specifically the arts, and the fifth house is art in general. So he has the 10th ruler with the ruler of the third and the fifth both, like that. But I don't know about his life, but there could have been some troubles with children because the fifth house ruler, Mercury, is, it's harmed by being combust the sun and combust with Mars, and Ketu aspects the fifth house. Now Jupiter rules children, and Jupiter's good, but there could have been some troubles with children. There could be some troubles with peace of mind as well.
Peace of mind is more of it. Peace of mind is more of it. And do we also take affairs from the fifth house, or do we take it from the eighth?
We take it from the fifth, but in India, who has affairs? I don't know. In America, the fifth house is love affairs. So a person could have a bad fifth house and they have bad love affairs, but they could actually have a good marriage. They could have a good marriage, even though having a lot of troubles in the love affairs. But in India, I don't know, because now maybe he has affairs because he's in the movie business. But when I do charts for Indians, most of them, there's no such thing as love affairs. They arrange a marriage and that's it. So, but
you need to be mixing with the new crowd.
What?
You need to be mixing with the youngsters now. They're hardly, at least in urban India, we don't come across way too many. There's still arranged marriages, but people are opting for arranging marriages of their own.
Okay. So the fifth house is love affairs, but if I see a horoscope where the ruler of the seventh house is conjunct with Venus, or there's a Venus-Mars conjunction, I will tell the parents, you may not be able to arrange a marriage here because this is a love marriage.
He had a love marriage.
In India, they call it a love marriage. Well, look at his seventh house. The seventh house ruler, the sun, is very, very, very strong because it's conjunct exalted Mercury. I would expect his partner to also be good with words and singing and music and Mercury. I would expect the spouse to be very mercurial.
Bang on. She is a very versatile actress in her own right, and she gave her profession to raise their children. But she was a and now she has come back into the mold, but not with that vigor. she's known to be a very, very versatile actress herself.
Yeah, very versatile. That would be Mercury. And the Rahu in the 7th house indicates that the partner could be powerful. They could be famous or powerful. Now, they could also be smothering or domineering. Rahu can be. But definitely talented and mercurial for sure. So it might be hard to arrange a marriage for him because the 7th ruler is so specific. It's so, so strong.
And what about the 4th house? You said that person has a lot of sorrow, but here not so much because
I think his childhood was not so good. You can say whatever you want, and I don't know what's written about him, but I don't think that the childhood was happy. I don't think the mother was in good shape because the 4th house ruler is Venus. It's fallen. It's in the 8th, and Saturn's in the 4th. I think that his mother did not have an easy life. And I think that his childhood may have been a little difficult. That's what I say.
And what about the 6th? What about the 8th house? What about the 8th house? So many planets there, and you've said about their effects on the 2nd house, on the 3rd house, on the 10th house, and the 11th. But what about the 8th house as such?
The 8th house represents longevity, and Saturn represents longevity. And it represents longevity because it represents the energy of a person. So when a person has a strong 8th house, they are filled with energy, okay? So this means he would be filled with energy, have a long life, and he would be sexy. In other words, the appearance would be sexy. A person can have a face that's not particularly good looking. But if the 8th house is powerful, the person is exuding so much energy that people find them sexy. They look at them and they say,
charismatic, very charismatic, charming, endearing.
Yeah, charisma is the 1st house.
Okay.
Charisma is the 1st house. And he has charisma, no question. But I'm talking strictly sexy. People look at him in a room and they go, ooh, that person's sexy. I don't know. That's what the horoscope indicates.
Rightly so, very rightly so. He is said to be attracting ladies even after his marriage, years after his marriage, like in robes. So
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, look, any superstar attracts women, but this is different. Before he was famous, I think that he would walk into a room and people would see somebody shy, introspective, and very sexy. Okay? And I think that those planets keep him living long. The thing is, I'm hesitant to say how psychic or metaphysical. The reason I'm hesitant to say it is because this horoscope is very worldly. The career is very powerful. Very powerful. The 3rd house is also an energy house. The 2nd house, which is money and knowledge and speaking. And the 8th house ruler, I do not like the 8th house ruler. The Mercury, it's exalted, it's in its own sign, but it's too close to the sun and it's with Mars. So I don't know how interested he is in astrology, metaphysical subjects. Maybe so, maybe not. But I can guarantee sexy, I can guarantee long-lived. But if he doesn't make it through Venus-Mars, if he makes it through Venus-Mars, he'll be long-lived. Longer than usual by 10 years.
What you've given us here is a very beautiful and a very strong chart, and you've taught us how to read a chart very nicely, very neatly, without getting, muddled up with too much of data, which is something a beginner would always look at when they are reading a chart. People have a lot of issues on learning how to read a chart. and this is a very good exam. So this was Amitabh Bachchan's chart for you. We will meet you again in the next part with the chart of Barack Obama. Till then, do stay tuned to my channel and have a great day ahead.